Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to Self-Care in the Sandwiches. My name is Mel Wakeman, whichever side she is. This is Leslie Waldron. I'll let her introduce herself in a minute. We are living these sandwiches in terms of we are caring for dependent younger folk in our family, our children, and also caring for our parents who are elderly and managing kind of chronic conditions. So we want to bring this conversation to the fore and talk honestly and openly about how bloody difficult this can be, and to give you some insight into how we're navigating it. And by all means, we are not perfect at this. We would love to learn from you as well, but also give you permission to say it's hard, and through our own experience and through the work that we do, perhaps sort of in terms of our skill basis, give you some tips and strategies that we think have helped us. So yeah, I'm a registered nutritionist. I'm a non-diet nutritionist, and I support people that have a difficult relationship with food, usually very anxious, overthinking brains. And so I want to bring some elements of that into the conversation today. Leslie, say hello.
Hi there. Thank you, Mel. I'm Leslie Waldron, and I'm an integrative women's health coach. And I support women to live wildly well through their perimenopause to postmenopause transition, which means integrating good nutrition, movement, and sleep and rest. And often the women that I work with are exhausted and overwhelmed, and many of them are in this sandwich themselves. And I have two children living at home, and I have a mother with Alzheimer's, and it's that in added challenge that has kind of brought Mel and I together to want to both explore our own experiences and be able to share what's working, as well as that healing element of knowing that you're not alone in doing all of this. So this week's episode is the cucumber sandwich. Who doesn't love a cucumber sandwich? Just the right amount of salt, very thinly sliced.
Feeling very posh just now.
Very posh, and you eat it with your little finger in the air and a cup of Earl Grey tea. But the main reason it's called a cucumber sandwich is because we're thinking about that cool as a cucumber, that self-care, that real sense of indulging what you need. And we want to, this episode, explore what we mean by self-care, particularly if you're overwhelmed and over the top with all of your different commitments. It can feel very hard to look after yourself. And we're going to talk about self-regulation and self-awareness, because those are a really important part of the self-care piece that isn't always easy to articulate and easy to explore. So we thought we'd bring you both sides of that self-care piece today.
Yeah, and I think we've spoken a number of times, Leslie, about how this self-care, this is the hard self-care. This isn't the kind of, oh, I'm going to look forward to diving in and soaking in a bath, and it's kind of easy to do that, or I'm just going to nip off and go and get my nails done. And absolutely there is a place for that. And if you're finding that kind of relatively easy to kind of organize and implement your life, please message me, because I want to know how that happens. But but it's I think self-care is around navigating the difficult emotions, around giving yourself permission to do this thing for you, when as women we are being pulled in so many different directions. And it's also facing the difficulty, and I think the resistance that we feel about taking care of ourselves, that might involve having difficult conversations.
Yeah.
Putting in place healthy boundaries can be notoriously difficult. And that's the hard self-care that really matters. So we want to talk about some of that, really, and how that resistance and those difficult emotions show up in our bodies. Because as you mentioned earlier, that self-awareness key,
absolutely,
to giving us a better understanding about what it is that we're feeling. And as women, we haven't often been given a voice. to say how we are feeling, to name how we are feeling, because society says, you just put the mask on and hey, you can do it all. And I think in terms of articulating those difficult emotions, saying, I don't like them, I am struggling, and ultimately asking for help. I don't think we've been necessarily shown how to do that.
Absolutely. And there is a sense that that we should just be able to cope with it all. And yet there's really clear evidence to show that coping with it all leads to in the long term, just coping with us and dealing with the stress is not great for our health and well-being, isn't great for our relationships, and won't ultimately be brilliant for all of those that we're caring for as well. So bringing in, prioritizing that self-awareness and self-care makes this whole process, I don't know if easier is the right word actually, but it does mean that you are somewhat protected against the impact of being pulled in multiple different directions.
I think this kind of practice of self-care can give us a greater sense of self. I think we can create more a knowing.
Yeah.
And it can help us feel more connected to ourselves. So in my practice, I do kind of a fair bit of embodiment work, and we work through and talk about a lot of these difficult emotions because so much of the time we are used to suppressing them because often we don't know how to deal with them. So let's just brush them under the carpet, and then we can pretend that they're not there. But of course, we know that doesn't work because they come back and bite you in the backside, basically. And I think we'll talk about what happens when our self-care practice may not be adequate or it's not effective for one reason or another. And that isn't to say it's always been like that. We sometimes find that as the challenges shift in our life and as our parents' health and state shifts and our children are going through different things and we're juggling work and we've got these flipping hormones that are pulling us along this roller coaster. I think I've just completely lost the track of what I was going to say.
We will talk about the perimenopause element of the sandwich in a couple of episodes time though, aren't we? Because I think that is really important. I wonder, Mel, if what we should start with is talk about, before moving on to talking about that self-awareness, self-regulation and feelings, is talk about some of the simple things about self-care, because often we can get lost in the big things and we can get lost in things taking time. And actually, there are some really simple things that can help us. And by help, what it does is it means it maintains our energy, it supports a slightly more regulated nervous system, it supports our own kind of health, and might also support kind of that anxiety, stress kind of balance as we go through the day. And self-care doesn't need to take really time, and it's often the super simple strategies that keep our body and mind supported. Small and really easily repeated actions are a bloody brilliant place to start. We started to touch on this, didn't we, in the last episode, talking a bit about eating and drinking and acknowledging the need of those.
Back to basics, wasn't it?
Very much back to basics. Are you staying well hydrated? Are you making sure that you are eating when you're hungry, and eating meals that are satisfying and give you pleasure and are sufficiently nourishing that you will feel energized? Are you sleeping? And sleep can be something, obviously, in our perimenopause years, can often be really messed with anyway by declining hormones and by the impact of high levels of cortisol in our system. And so mitigating that might be reducing the consumption of caffeine and alcohol in order to support really good sleep. But what we want is to stay in. We live in this world where we talk quite a lot about our nervous systems, but it's really interesting talking to people who aren't really aware that we have this rest and digest, this parasympathetic kind of mode for the parasympathetic nervous system, and a sympathetic nervous system, which is fight or flight, fight, flight, or freeze. And we can often get very much in these sandwiches stuck in fight, flight, or freeze. And things that will add to the stress, add to the fight or flight, will be not having enough sleep, will be not eating enough, will even be being thirsty, because our body will perceive that as a stressor. So I don't know about you, but I would say that I get up in the morning and I've got a glass of water by my bed, and then I will drink that before I go downstairs. Then I'll have another glass of water while I'm pottering around in the kitchen making a cup of tea. And generally, before the morning is out, I've had 4 big glasses of water. Now I know that when I am really good about doing that, that is a big part of maintaining my energy. And if my mood and such like have dropped by 11 o'clock, I can usually bring that back to water. So that's how simple it is. And so I will end up feeling more agitated, more tired. And I can see, because my watch has got like a heart rate monitor on it that shows my stress levels, I will see my stress levels going up, and it will be connected to some of that will be connected to my water consumption. So it's so simple, but it has an effect on that, moving us back towards fight or flight. When in that rest and digest mode, that's when our body repairs itself. That's when we're better able to think more clearly. Where it's better when we'll be able to support ourselves in having a good night's sleep. That's when we heal. That's when we fight off colds and flu, not in fight or flight.
So giving yourself like little sort of micro routines in terms of that's in your morning. Obviously you're still active, you're still going around doing things, so it's like, this is what I need to do right now.
So the water is the key thing. And for me,
and then have a wee, I take it.
You do generally need quite a few wees first thing actually. That is the problem. Well, it's not a problem, it's just a fact of life. But so you didn't need to time the school run effectively, so that doesn't become a stressor if you're desperate for the loo while you're taking the children to school. And then there are other little things that I do that are about, so I get outside first thing in the morning. This morning I had to put my dry robe on because it was cold and windy and a bit wet, but just to get that daylight, because there's really interesting evidence about how if you get daylight early in the morning, it helps to suppress your cortisol levels, to keep your stress levels low. And it has the benefit of resetting your circadian rhythm, which will enhance the quality of your sleep. So to me, that's a win-win, even if the rest of the family think that I'm a bit nuts on a windy day going outside with my cup of tea. But they're simple things that don't really take any time. And in my head, I'm then going, well, do you know what? I've done that for myself today, and I can do some other things as well. But those are kind of my absolute baseline level things that I look after myself, and they're generally done before 8 o'clock in the morning as well.
Yeah, so it's kind of setting the tone for the day. And I think about the clients that I work with, and sometimes I think often the morning is the easier time, maybe because we're kind of habitually into that routine, and often it's quite static, I guess, apart from those firefighting moments. It's often later on in the day where the wheels can come off.
Yes, absolutely.
In the morning we may well be, under the influence of caffeine, but we've rested, we've hopefully had some breakfast, and it's really about prioritizing that you put your oxygen mask on first. Get yourself set up. But as you go through the day and you're exposed to maybe more firefighting, or you forget the eating and the drinking, and your resilience kind of fizzles out a little bit, and then by the time you get to the evening time, it's kind of the time where it's just like, well, I might as well just chuck it all in now. And particularly I think in terms of maybe eating behaviours and so on, that I see the evening times kind of conflicted between hungry, tired, exhausted, emotionally exhausted, don't have the energy to even get off the sofa and go up to bed, which I think we touched on a little bit last episode. But yeah, being stuck in that. So I think if I can share from my experience, I have a very active brain. I'd say it's hyperactive. So when my anxiety levels go up, it just feeds into that. So I really struggle to sit down.
Mm.
And if things are on my mind and I don't necessarily like processing that, and I don't mean to say that we always have to process that,
Mm.
gentle distractions can be really helpful. Like our brain is a muscle, like
Mm.
any other muscle in the body. It needs a rest. So I have no worries at all about saying I will watch Grey's Anatomy. Or what was the other one I watched? Virgin River, some kind of girly,
Yeah.
easy watching kind of thing.
Yeah.
Maybe with some blood and guts, maybe with some romance. But I can't just sit there, and I struggle to read a book. I can listen to books. I'm trying to pick up crochet again now, Leslie.
I crochet while watching television chewing gum, and that's again, just like you, very busy mind. But the crochet plus the kind of mindless TV stops me from doing that thing, which I know I'm prone to do. And I know it's no good for me, which is sitting and watching TV and scrolling, or as I said last week, wandering into the kitchen because I think maybe I need a biscuit because I'm feeling uncomfortable and the discomfort isn't about the biscuit. So the crochet and anything that's simple and repetitive also is really calming for our nervous system. So
I think
yeah.
it's some of this is about giving yourself permission when
Yeah.
you're kind of playing around and experimenting with a self-care practice. There is no set look.
Mm-mm.
There really isn't. Like if you like me struggle to kind of come down, I can't just press the switch like the lights are going out and I'm like, oh, there we go. I'm just going to sit and watch this program. I'm like fidgeting, getting up, just checking something, coming down. So however you might need to kind of titrate yourself to come down to ground as you may prepare yourself to go to
Yeah.
bed. If you're up here, that titration may take a fair bit of time. Other things that I often try are kind of maybe getting rid of some of this adrenaline that I have in my body because I'm kind of thinking about all sorts of different things. I've got, as parents and being in these sandwiches, there's like 10 tabs open for looking at everybody's needs. And so I may well dance around in the kitchen.
Right.
Sometimes I will kind of push against a wall. Sometimes we need to kind of release some of that energy and you get kind of a good chest stretch. So I know we're kind of on blurry background. I don't know if this will work really, but I kind of push on a wall so I can really stretch my chest out, but then I'll kind of go over and it just helps release some of the tension in my shoulders, but I can practice some deep breathing and it just gets to mobilize my body.
Yeah. And actually both of those help to improve your they open up the muscles around your chest and actually will help you breathe better and more deeply.
I think when you're really anxious and you're almost checking out,
yes,
movement like that can bring you back into your body. Same as breath work, dancing around the kitchen. It can bring you home a little bit. And that means that you're in a better position to be able to kind of go, well, what am I feeling? And and you can feel the tension and you can notice the bloating. And it's much as we might not want to go there, these are really important clues. They're not bad.
No.
Release the judgment about what stories you may be holding. I call them difficult feelings. They're not negative. They just are the physical signs and the thoughts and our emotions. They are the clues as to what we might need.
Yeah, I think that's so powerful. So when it comes to kind of the acts of self-care, it is the small things, but they are really powerful. And a lot of them will help us to increase our self-regulation and our self-awareness. So I wonder if it would be good for us to move on to talking about that now, Mel, and what we might mean by self-awareness and self-regulation. Um, and there is something very something that I've noticed about myself, is that I feel like I can't predict things as well because I don't know what the next challenge is going to be. And so there it has been right at the beginning after my mother's diagnosis, I did do a little bit of catastrophizing and going on my life as I know it is over. Do I have to spend the next 10 years of my life catering to my mother's needs above and beyond? I have a sense of duty and responsibility, but I also then built up quite a lot of resentment. And we're going to talk about that a little bit in the next episode alongside guilt. Um, um, but actually, what has helped me is to be able to articulate that and then to start to put in place boundaries around my own thinking, as well as boundaries around how far I get involved with this, how far I get involved in that next stage, and where can I delegate or get support or anything like that. Thinking too far ahead was taking me out of my body and out of the present moment completely, and was making it very hard for me to make rational decisions about the day to day and keeping me in fight or flight all the time.
Yeah.
So
But it's normal, isn't it? Like that we do that because that's part of our anxious brain going, well, if we can predict all of the outcomes, then I'll have solutions for all of those possible outcomes and then we'll be okay.
yeah.
Yet there's so much wasted energy on that, but that's your brain's natural response coming from fear. So we just, let's just calm things down. Let's just stay here. Can I sit with this right now?
And noticing that that's what I was doing. This is where it comes to that awareness, noticing that was what I was doing, enabled me to go, okay, I need to rein it in. And that's that self-awareness. That, and then because then what happens the next stage to that kind of looking too far in the future is that, and worrying too much, is that you end up putting your own life on hold. Like I felt like I couldn't plan holidays. I felt like I couldn't plan weekends away. I felt like I didn't really know how I was going to support my daughter when she was starting secondary school, and it was almost like I was watching my future shrink, and it was really unhelpful. So I needed to it's like, how do we understand what's going on, stay aware of that, understand your feelings, and then put things in place that stop you going there. And I think I'm still working on that at the moment. I mean, I got a coach, an emotional wellbeing coach that I worked with earlier on this year and tail end of last year, I think. And that was massively helpful because it helped me name and feel those feelings and then do with him what I needed to.
And I think that's so important. We are allowed to say we're finding something difficult. We're allowed to, I think, as part of our processing, it's so important that we speak our truth. That's what I'm trying to say here.
Yes.
And so part of that requires self-awareness so that we can use, for example, I use a lot of the kind of the physical sensations in our body to help kind of confirm what the thoughts and the emotions are saying in my head, because often they show up together.
Yes, absolutely.
So you can kind of go with more confidence in terms of, I'm feeling guilty, that will come to, I'm angry, I'm frustrated.
And we can be a bit afraid of saying that we're angry. We can be a bit afraid of saying that we don't like what we're doing. And I think that helping ourselves to name the emotions that we're going through, and perhaps have somebody, whether it's a close friend or your partner, who you can help, who can listen, who can talk through that, so that you've got a safe space to share those difficult emotions, can be really helpful as well.
And anger's is a really interesting one. Like I say, we're kind of told don't be angry, and people are frightened of it because it can be really explosive.
Yeah. And particularly menopause, right?
Yes, never done that before. But I think there's also how other people react to that.
Yeah.
So it kind of, when it's unexpected and people don't know what to do with it.
Mm.
And I think often as human beings, we are fixers and
Mm.
problem solvers. I mean, I think about the times where I've just lost it with complete strangers, which I have, or my husband. And it's like, it kind of makes you want to retreat.
Yeah.
It's not,
Like,
you
oh,
don't
I'm not safe to go out in the
identify.
world. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do we bring in self-awareness practices? Mine, like my big thing is both journaling and menstrual cycle tracking. Like almost I have a beginning and end of the day check-in, like with pen to paper, because that works for me. And as a way of going, well, how do I feel? How am I doing? What's going to make at the beginning of the day, what's going to make the day great? At the end of the day, what was the best thing about the day? What could I have done better? And sometimes it will just be a few words, and sometimes there'll be, I need to write all of this out, otherwise I'm going to explode. And I know it sounds really simple. And some people will really resist journaling, but it doesn't have to be writing beautifully. And you could just write it on a piece of paper and then burn the piece of paper. But it helps you just get to, for me, can help you really get to the nub of those feelings.
I'm a huge advocate of journaling, and I think it's only in times of healing your relationship with food. It's one of the primary tools that we encourage, but it's also one of the most resisted.
Yeah.
Because there are so many expectations around what it's supposed to look like. So it doesn't have to be coherent. It could be random words.
Sometimes random words written really hard that the paper is almost broken.
With a must buy loo roll next to it, like it's a business list on it. But also, I think there's that feeling of, well, what if something else comes up?
Yeah.
That's just going to be more stuff.
Yeah.
That I've got to deal with. And I don't think I can do that. And I think I think Leslie and I want to reassure you that you don't have to have all the answers. The emotional processing and problem solving isn't your role necessarily. By all means, go and get help. But go on, you're going to say something.
Something just popped into my head then, which has come up a few times for me, and we might have touched on it this last week, but was in the last episode, is that when people offer you really well-meaning advice, and that can feel absolutely overwhelming and exhausting. Yeah. Don't know, and it's almost like that adds to the mental load. And what I've found that I had to do is to put that, particularly people who aren't living through your situation, like they don't know, but they'll have great ideas on what you can do. And what I do with those is I accept them as a little gift, and then I put them away.
Yeah, the unsolicited advice that you didn't ask for.
Yeah. But that can really be a big trigger sometimes for me.
Yeah.
In terms of amplifying anxiety.
Yeah.
Such like.
I get that.
Can
I just talk about this self-regulation stuff?
Yes, please. That's a really important point.
The time. I guess when we think about self-regulation, it's our ability to understand and manage our reactions to our feelings, what others might be saying, and the things happening around us. And what self-care does is it helps to increase our capacity to be able to deal with these difficult feelings and emotions, okay? And I guess to give some examples of what, if our nervous system, we have a good ability to self-regulate, then we're often able to better handle more intense emotions. Okay. So like the frustrations and the anger, disappointment and sadness, those are difficult ones. It's more likely that we'll be able to kind of calm down after maybe that verbal outburst or that confrontation that you had, or even with something exciting, to be honest. It means that we can refocus our attention from one task to the next. We're not kind of dwelling and going back and rethinking, I should have, which I do a lot, I should have said that. You always come up with something kind of smarty pants that you've come up with afterwards, after the event, or maybe kind of rethinking about, I should have listened more, I should have been more compassionate. But it's about being able to better control our impulses. And if that's around food, I think I want to come back to the food. It's kind of,
Yeah.
it's being able to do that, and being able to get along with other people. You know, that's what self-regulation means. And if we're dysregulated, it's more likely that we are under, we're on high alert. So we're often much more sensitive. And this might show up as being sensitive to noises. So loud noise or just hustle and bustle. I noticed that in myself, or not being able to switch off the background noise. So if the TV's on in the background, it's kind of just getting on your wick kind of thing. We might be more sensitive to lights. So I might just bring the lights down a bit. Textures of clothing, it's like it's too scratchy, get it off, put something. So like layering a lovely fleecy soft blanket can just help if that feels good.
Yeah.
Just come back to yourself. It shows up as not being able to switch off, to be fidgety, mind and memory issues. And it's just interesting when I think about digestive issues, tiredness, all of these things that show up when our nervous system is struggling a bit. They're all the menopausal bits as well.
Yeah.
So this is why we need to come back to that.
Yeah, and why we will in a couple of episodes' time, because everything is all linked together. But we are through that perimenopause, menopause stage, we're a little bit more sensitive to stress. So all of these things may well feel amplified, and then it's very hard to work out where's all this stuff coming from.
So I think just coming back.
Yeah, so the self-regulation then becomes what's really important.
Yeah, and coming back to your journaling, in terms of, I will often talk about just noticing, being able to pay attention, and that may be for a snippet amount of time when you perhaps come down a little bit. But just in terms of, I'll often do kind of food journaling, and it just helps people become more aware of maybe not just what they're eating, but when they're eating, and if it is erratic, because definitely erratic eating, like you were saying earlier, in terms of being dehydrated, it's a threat to the body. So again, it adds to the cortisol. But I'm not so much interested in the food per se. I'm more interested in so what was going on then?
Yeah.
What was going on around why did I skip lunch, or why was I kind of compulsively eating the biscuits? Again, there's no judgment. It's just like, what was going on? What did you notice in your body?
Yeah.
And if we can practice someone really wound me up. I reached the end of my tether. I could feel the heat in my shoulders. I could feel my heart bounding. I can feel, just maybe tension in my tummy. It's like just becoming familiar with those little subtle clues can be the steps to kind of going, my body's finding this difficult.
Yeah. And I think so actually that's a really good point at which we can try and bring all of this together, because hopefully that helps us see that the self-regulation and the self-care are all part and parcel of the same thing. And the self-regulation is about being aware of what you might be about being aware about what your body needs, and it also might be being aware about what you need to look after your emotions and your kind of the back and forth around stress and such like. And that self-care, you almost notice when you are dysregulated that some of those stress, some of that self-care falls out. And so then your way back to drinking the water or getting the walk in or whatever might be that actually, first of all, you need to go back to the regulation, or it might be vice versa, because sometimes it's the small actions that are most helpful. And I wonder, we were going to talk a little bit about boundaries, and I'm aware that we're nearly at the half-hour mark. So I wonder and we'll come back to that, I think, almost every episode, because actually that self-regulation and self-care means that in order to fully achieve that, you need to put boundaries around how far you are stretching yourself and how much you're going to be pulled and pushed in one direction, and almost having clear, I am not going to deal with this, like that kind of thing. I don't know if you've got anything you could add to that.
I think just one more note in terms of when we're feeling so much and we can feel inadequate, feel that we're not good enough or that we're failing at this. I think that can make it really difficult to rationalize taking care of ourselves because we're in a body or we're in a being that we're not particularly fussed about. So again, it's really applying that compassionate lens into reminding yourself that you are human, that you don't need to do everything. And we're going to come into this, I think, when we talk about the guilt around managing expectations. But to be able to give yourself permission that even if you don't feel great about yourself, you can still take care of your body, because your body is fighting for you. It is with you the whole way. And sometimes I think we have to remember that.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. Thank you, Mel. I think this is a really good place to finish. That our body will give us the message. We need to be able to listen to it because it will help everything else.
So you can come and find us on Instagram, and we're on LinkedIn. We are who we are, aren't we, in terms of our names and so on. We'll have our contact details around the video. So if if there's something here that's resonated, we would love to hear from you. It's a safe place to share this stuff. And we're open to hearing about what other people's experiences are. And if you're finding things that are helping you, then let us know. We'd love to know. But thank you for watching.
Thank you.
See you next time. Bye-bye.